Welcome to the Business of Story podcast, where the world's best storytellers from business, Hollywood, and beyond teach you how to use stories to communicate and connect with your customers. The Business of Story is sponsored by ACT, the best-selling customer management software for small business, Oracle Marketing Cloud, enabling businesses to target, engage, convert, analyze, and use marketing technology to deliver a better customer experience. Sixter, allowing marketers to automatically inject clickable images called campaigns into every one of their employee email signatures to promote their company's most important initiatives or content. And by Signal Labs, the real-time cross-media story tracking platform. Here's your host, Park Howell from Park & Co. and today's special Business of Story guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Park Howell and welcome to this week's episode. My job here is to connect you with the top storytelling minds in business who share tips and techniques to help you drive growth for your professional services firm through the power of story. That's what we do here at Business of Story, and we would love to do it with you. We're available for story strategy consulting for your brand, webinars and workshops for your people, and speaking engagements for your gatherings. Our goal, either through this podcast or working with you one-on-one, is to reignite your one true superpower, storytelling, so you can nudge the world in any direction you choose. You can learn more at businessofstory.com, where we have a utility belt of storytelling tools for you to download, all to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. Today, I have the honor of hosting John Oechsle, a true gentleman who has built an incredibly successful career by nurturing brand culture first through the stories he shares with his people and then providing them the opportunities and environments to live into those stories. John is the CEO of Swiftpage, a company that offers ACT customer relationship management software that fuels the growth of solopreneurs and small businesses. John will share his 3 pillars to being a successful leader. We will discuss the universal challenges for every small business. He shares stories about how the wisdom of business storytelling has seen him through the ups and downs of growing in dynamic companies and following his journeyed career. And we'll learn what it means to live the exclamation. Let the stories begin. John Oechsle, CEO,
Swiftpage, yes.
Owner of the ACT products.
Correct.
Welcome to the Business of Story. Now, it's great to have you here because, as you know, as we were talking about earlier, we are typically talking to authors and screenwriters and, as I call them, story artists. But now, as the show has been progressing, we've been bringing more of the story artists out of the business world in. And what you've showed me with what you've all done here with the culture of Swiftpage and ACT has been pretty amazing. So welcome to the show. Today, we're going to ask you about how do you do it with story.
Park, thank you so much for having me. And thanks for coming to the Swiftpage office and becoming a Swiftie and being part of Swiftpage Nation.
Well, this is great. And welcome to Scottsdale, Arizona. I live down around the corner in Phoenix. So
Great.
You guys are in for town for a big conference, and it worked out perfectly for us to get together.
Yes.
But,
yes.
And for everybody that you know, or if you're new to the show, Swiftpage and ACT are a very important sponsor to the Business of Story. And I thank you for your pioneering attitude towards it because you were with us from the very beginning in July 1 when we launched. But I had the same question back in July 1 that I still have now, if you can sort it out for me.
Yeah.
Swiftpage, ACT. What is the whole offering here?
It's a story.
Yeah, tell us your story. Yeah.
It's a story. So Swiftpage was a company that was a startup. It was founded back in 2001. It's founded by a gentleman by the name of Bob Ogden. This is his 4th company, so he's a serial entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And I was an early investor in the company, and it was a email marketing company, so very similar to something like a Constant Contact or a MailChimp or something along those lines. So small businesses would use that software to send out marketing campaigns, email marketing campaigns. The company had grown pretty rapidly over a period of time, and around 2010, 11, kind of stagnated a little bit, got to about $5 million in revenue, and just kind of not bad.
Yeah.
Most startups don't even get that far.
Right.
So we kind of got to that level, and I was on the board at the time, and Bob Ogden asked me to kind of step in as the CEO and kind of see if we could grow the company. And I said, be careful what you wish for. I am not a startup guy. Bob is. But what I do is I take companies that have started up and I take them from point A to point B rapidly. And that could be anywhere from organic growth to going into different geographic markets, or through acquisition. And so we kind of looked at this, and we looked around the industry, and we had embedded our software into the ACT product line and the SalesLogix product line. They were both owned by Sage Software over in the UK. And the opportunity presented itself for us to acquire them, and we went after it, and we did it. And it was interesting because it was like the minnow swallowing the whale. It was a David and Goliath story, and it was like the whole industry was behind us, because it was like, how's this little company going to acquire these two bigger companies? And so we did. We went through and we did that. We closed on March of 2013. And we rapidly took Swiftpage and ACT and integrated those two companies. And then we had SalesLogix, which was a kind of more of a mid-market CRM. And we struggled, and you and I were talking about this earlier, we struggled a little bit. It was like, okay, we got three companies now. We got Swiftpage, we've got ACT, we've got SalesLogix. What do you call this thing? And what we really decided to do is that Swiftpage was this young, fresh startup type of a company, and it had a certain persona around it. And ACT has been around for a long time. It's been around since 1988. So the brand is very strong. Everybody knows it. Maybe a little bit tired. And SalesLogix was the same way. It had been around since the early 90s. Another great brand, but a little bit tired. So we said, you know what? Let's call the company Swiftpage. And then Swiftpage would have these two product lines called ACT and SalesLogix. And then what we did is we took all of the culture of Swiftpage, and we said we're going to make that happen inside of the other two companies that we were bringing together. And that's how we became Swiftpage. We all became Swifties. We kind of defined ourselves as Swifties, and then we all just said, you know what, we're Swiftpage Nation. We're all Swifties in Swiftpage Nation, and we're one team on one journey. And that's kind of how we brought it all together.
And tell us about the product line. What does ACT do?
So ACT is a customer relationship management
CRM?
Type software, CRM, for the micro and small business. So, and when we define micro, we define that as the solopreneur, the one person, up to about 5 to 10 people. That's kind of the micro business in our definition. We define small then from a 10-person company to a 50-person company, and that's really the sweet spot of ACT. When you start getting up at a higher, you started getting into different types of CRM systems, the SalesLogix, the Salesforces, etc. But our sweet spot is that micro and small business.
Yeah. And what is it about the product that is specific to them? I mean, what makes it easy? I'm a small business, so I'm kind of curious. And we've taken on Salesforce, and we find it daunting.
Yeah.
And we don't use it anymore because it was daunting. What's the difference?
So the difference is that ACT, we believe ACT is the center of the universe of what every single small business needs. And it's that way because it houses the most critical information that you need in order to grow your business. That's information about your contacts, your leads, your prospects, and your customers. And the difference between a large CRM package like a Salesforce or whatever, it takes an enormous amount of work to get that information in and to keep it up to date, etc. And what we've tried to do with the ACT business is say, okay, if it's the center of the universe, how do we get information in automatically? And the number one issue that micro and small businesses have are time. Right? You don't have. I mean, why? Because you're doing 5 and 6 or 7 different things.
Time and simplicity. That's the thing. It's so hard to get simplicity in there.
Right. And so if you don't have time, and you don't have time to learn a new software or go get a computer science degree so you can do or work a software, you need to have an environment or software that's going to work for you, not you work for the software. And that's the mentality that we took with ACT. So we have this software, and what we tried to do is say, you know what? Every time you interact with a lead, a prospect, or whatever, we want that information to automatically come in. So if you have a website, right, and somebody lands on your website, that's an interaction. That should automatically come into ACT. You shouldn't have to say, oh, John landed on my website, I'm going to put that information in. Right? Or if John does some kind of a transaction with you, and you have like a Square or some kind of other payment device or whatever, and you swipe the credit card, and that information should automatically come in. If you have a phone call with me, it should come in. If you do an email with me. So what we try to do is say, let's integrate with all the other tools that a micro and small business uses, and automatically bring those interactions into ACT. So then you have one authoritative source where all that information stores.
Yeah.
Then we took it a step further, and we said, okay, that's great. Now you don't want to have a PhD to go in there and say, how do I make that useful? So if you have all this information, what we did is we put a recommendation architecture around that. And what that architecture does is it goes into all those interactions and analyzes them and comes back to you and says, hey, based on the analysis, here's the next best interaction to have with John. And it does that for you, right? And we serve it up in two different forms. One is what's called the call list, and the other is called the activity list. So you wake up every morning and you go in and you fire up ACT and you say, what do I need to do today? You say, let me see the call list. Boom. It says, hey, you know what? Call John, email John, or do this with John because he's really, really interested.
Yeah.
Don't worry about Park because he's not interested right now. And what that does is number one, saves you time, but more importantly, it makes your world that you never are dealing with what we call the cold call. Right? You're always interacting with somebody who wants to be interacted with. So anyway, that's the difference.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Now we have a good idea of what it does. And what's interesting to me about it is this culture that you've created. You've somewhat inherited, but you've really blown up. I mean, in a great way.
Yeah.
Through the power of story. And you've told me a little bit about it, so I've had the preview for it. Before we get there, we'd like to learn a little bit more about you, what you've been doing over the years, and what brought you to this role with that.
Yeah, great. So I started my career probably like 90% of everybody else's, coming out of college, and I went into consulting because you didn't know what you wanted to do. So let's get hired by a consulting firm or whatever. And I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And what that enabled me to do is go into different companies and experience different cultures.
And what were you consulting on?
I was actually implementing, and now I'm going to show my age, I was implementing what was called MRP way back in the day, right?
MRP.
So, MRP. So it was MRP, then it went to MRP2, and then it went to ERP.
What does MRP mean?
Manufacturing, Resource, and Planning.
Okay.
Right?
Does that have anything to do with a fax machine?
No.
That one, all right. Okay. Yeah.
No, this was all about automating the manufacturing process.
Gotcha.
And all the tools and inventory and things along those lines.
Yeah.
So I was able to go do that. I was implementing these packages and writing software, and I had a computer science degree, and what it enabled me to do is start to look at different companies and how they did things differently. And some companies you went into and you said, oh my God, I will never do that. And other companies are like, wow, that's a great company. I want to do that. One of the companies I went into and I said, wow, that's a great company, is a company called Kellogg's, the cereal manufacturer. And I remember Jay Schreiner was the global CIO, and Arnie Langbo was the CEO of the company. And I said, guys, if you ever need somebody, I'm here. And they said, great, when you're done with consulting, let me know. And push comes to shove, 2 years later, I called them up and said, I'm done with consulting, and they said, come on in. So I worked at Kellogg's, and that's kind of really where I got my first real international experience. And that was, I think, something that if you have an opportunity in your career, do it. Because we get into the U.S. and you get into different companies and you see how it is here. If you get outside of the U.S. and you start working in a different country, and you turn around and you look back at the U.S. and you're like, oh my God, I could do things so differently if I just knew how it was perceived outside of the country.
Open your eyes, right?
Exactly. So I had a great career there and moved around, did a lot of different international assignments, and then I kind of went and did what I thought was a startup type of thing, and that was, we kind of formed this holding company, and we went out and acquired 3 title insurance companies, and went from 0 revenue to 1.7 billion in 18 months. And I said, guys, is this startup?
This is easy.
This is easy. Why are you all telling me it's hard? It's really easy. But we took that public and had a wonderful run with that. We took it public at, I think it was $19 a share, and when I left it was $65 a share. So it had a real nice run there.
Yeah.
And then I went to work for yet another large company, Johnson & Johnson. Fantastic company. And if you think about these two companies, and I'll set Land America aside for a second, which is what the startup was. If I look at Kellogg's and I look at J&J, it was all about the culture. And and it was really deep seated, and that really had a very lasting effect on me. Is like, oh my gosh, you have somebody like J&J that had 165,000 employees. but all shared the same culture. I don't care where you went in the world, what division you were in or whatever, it was the exact same culture. And I was like, boy, there's something to this culture thing. There really is. And then the history, and you talk about stories, right? And when you go into a Kellogg's or you go into a J&J, the very first thing they do is they tell you the history of the company. W.K. Kellogg, how the company was started, how that kind of, and you just listen to the story and you're like, oh my God, this is fantastic, type of thing. So I had a good career at J&J, and then I got this interesting phone call from a gentleman that I know. His name is Jerry Stead, and Jerry is still to this day the CEO and chairman of IHS. And Jerry said, "Hey,
IHS is
Information Handling Services. We rebranded it as IHS, and it was a data company.
Okay.
And so it had data that in the energy world and in the engineering world. That's how it started. And so in the engineering world, they were selling standards, so IEEE standards. So they were basically a reseller. And then in the energy world, they were selling information about every single oil well in the world, right? So what it is, how much production it has, et cetera. So it's pretty valuable or whatever. And it was a $200 million privately held company. It was 44 years old, and it was a mess. And Jerry said, we're going to come in, and he kind of handpicked his team.
It was a mess how? Operationally or just?
It was just a company that, yes, operationally, I mean, it stagnated. It had been around for 44 years, and it had all kinds of baggage associated with it, and it just wasn't going anywhere. I think it might have even been technically bankrupt when we walked in, but it was that kind of kind of a mess. And Jerry, we kind of came in, and he said, we're going to clean this thing up, and we're going to get it Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, and we're going to take it public, and we're going to hypergrow it to $1 billion or more. And we were like, okay, yeah, that's great, and we did. So we all kind of came in 2003. It took us a couple of years to clean it up, and we took it public in 2005, November of 2005 at $16 a share. And I was there from 03 till 09, and we did 37 acquisitions. And when I walked out, we were about 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
The stock is trading over $100 a share. It's still today trading over $100 a share, and they've since continued to go on. Jerry's still at the helm, and But again, if I look at that that experience. And you talk about storytelling. Jerry is a phenomenal storyteller, and he is.
You're not so bad yourself, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But he can sit down to a group, whether it's an executive team, whether it's a group of investors, whether it's a group of customers, and he has the ability to take what we're trying to do and bring it down to a simple story that you can understand. And once you understand it, you're like, yes, I can do that. And I can remember him sitting there one day and saying to all of us, there was the executive team, maybe about 10 of us, and he goes, we're gonna do these three. We were looking to acquire 3 companies, and he goes, we're gonna acquire these 3 companies, and we're gonna close them on the same day. And we're like, you're nuts, right? Okay, we're looking at him. The old man's gone nuts, right? I mean, he's done.
Gotcha.
And he said, and he just proceeded to tell us the story of how we were going to do it. And we did. We executed it, so that's where I think the power of the story is all about. So I was at IHS, and I did a quick stint at a company called Digital Globe, which is a satellite company where we kind of changed the strategy a little bit, and then acquired our largest competitor and grew that dramatically. And through all of that, particularly after IHS, I was on a lot of different boards of smaller companies trying to help them grow. And that's how I met Bob, and that's how I got into this position. So,
well, you've had a lot of success along your way. Can you share one blow up, one failure, something that us small business folks can learn from? Do you have a story there?
I do, yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah, so it was interesting, and then I'll go back to the IHS days, and so we did this whole thing where we came in and we cleaned up the company, got it all Sarbanes-Oxley compliant, and took it public. And what we had done is laid the foundation that we were going to become this acquisition machine. And the very first acquisition we did was we acquired a company called USA. I think it was USA Info out of Virginia Beach, Virginia. and it was a miserable failure. I mean, it just didn't work, and this was the first one out of the chute, and we're just like, oh my God, if the first one didn't work, what are we going to do? And it was twofold in my mind as I look back on it. Number one was they were a head-to-head competitor, and they hated us. We hated them. We hated each other. Right? So how do you acquire somebody and become one when you hate each other?
So this oil and water mixture of trying to make the culture work.
Exactly. And then we were like, oh, you know what? That's not going to, we'll figure that out. And then we said, but it'll be great for the customers, right? And the customers, when you realize if the two companies hate each other, it's pretty much that the customers are probably siding with the customer with the company, right? So the customers hated us as well. So we thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to bring these customers together.
Figure it out. Yeah.
And it was just a really bad failure. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, holy smokes, we got to fix this, because if we want to go off and start acquiring companies like crazy, we better figure out how to make it work. And so
what'd you learn from that?
Well, we learned on two things. One is, don't always think about if you're going to buy a competitor that it's always going to work, right? Because a lot of times you say, well, I'm going to buy the competitor and the customers will just come over to us anyway. There's a reason why the customers are with your competitor. They may not like you, they may not like your product or whatever, so that may not always work. And sometimes, depending on the competition, if you hate each other, it's never going to work, right? You're never going to be able to get this. So what's going to happen is you're going to have to wipe out, 90% of the people, and acquisitions are only successful because of the people. And when you have to start wiping them out, it just isn't going to work. So we fixed that, and we became, as we started looking and doing due diligence on companies, the culture became extremely important. Can they fit into the culture? Can we make them fit into the culture? Etc. So that was a huge learning experience for us. But it was pretty scary. The first one out of the gate, we're like, yeah, we're going to be this great acquisition machine. Boom, failure. Oh.
Well, we need to take a break for our wonderful sponsors, including yourself. And when we come back, what I'd like to talk about is what you've learned from the years of acquiring companies and bringing those cultures together, and how that worked here with Swiftpage Act, and the story that you've created, because it's a pretty amazing office you've got around here. So Great. When we come back right after this, let's learn about that. Are you keeping track of sales leads in a spreadsheet, or worse, Post-it notes all over your desk? Well, there's a better way, and it doesn't involve spending a fortune on complex CRM software. For over 25 years, ACT has been the #1 best-selling contact and customer management software. It's super affordable and easy to use. ACT helps individuals, small businesses, and sales teams organize prospect and customer details in just one place. It also helps you market products and services more effectively, and most importantly, it drives sales. Try ACT for 30 days by visiting actstory.com and sign up for a chance to win a pair of Bose Quiet Comfort 20i acoustic noise canceling headphones, a $299 value. Again, that's actstory.com. Welcome back to the Business of Story, and with me today, the CEO of Swiftpage, and with his marvelous product line, ACT, is John Oechsle. John, thank you so much for having me out here in your Scottsdale offices. It's fantastic. I know you're in town for a big conference, just got off the golf course. You look fantastic. I'm envious. I wish I had just gotten off the golf course. But as we were talking earlier in the show, you have done a lot of acquiring of companies in your past lives. And when you came into this, you had to bring 3 different cultures together. And how did story play a big part in that?
It's a story unto itself. Yeah. But I think that there's 2 things that I would say is, one, what is leadership, first and foremost? And when you look at leadership, which I think is critical to have strong leadership in order to make acquisitions and integrations work. And there's 3 dimensions of leadership that I've learned throughout the years that various people like Jerry Stead, we talked about him earlier, etc. And it starts with you have to be able, as a leader, to tell a story, right? And if you can't tell the story, and that really gets to the vision, right? People have to believe in the vision. Where are we going with this? And a lot of people say, well, the vision, and you've seen all different kinds of visions all around them, and they're so verbose and they're whatever, and people look at it and they're like, well, I don't know what that means. And that's where the storytelling comes in. You've got to tell the story and say, listen, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to, get up. We're going to fuel small business growth, and then the world will know us as the #1 small business solutions provider. That's it. And make it really simple. And if you can tell a simple, compelling story, people will follow you. And that's the #1 dimension, I think, of being a leader. The second dimension is what we call experience. You've got to have been there and done that. And that gives you credibility. Right? So if you say, my guys, you have this great story, and you say, you know what, guys, we're going to take this hill. And they're like, have you ever taken the hill before? And you're like, no, but trust me, I think it's going to be great, right? It's like, so you have to have some...
Well, you tried that with your earlier acquisition. You said, we're going to take this hill, we're going to acquire these 2 competitors, and it's going to be great.
Right,
so, yeah.
And it didn't work, right? And so you have to have that experience. And again, that really gives you the credibility. So you have this great story, then you have the credibility, and then the third dimension of leadership is people, and it's team. And you've got to create this environment where a team can come together. And there's all different kinds of dimensions of team. We can get into a whole nother podcast on team. But the #1 thing there is you've got to have a group of people that are all pulling in the same direction. Yes, they get your story or whatever, but then it really kind of came down to the fact that, okay, why do we exist? Why does Swiftpage exist? Okay, we have these 3 companies that are coming together, 4 different locations around the world. We went to 350 people from a 15-person company. Why do we exist? Why do we get up every morning? And we call that the purpose. And so we say, our purpose is really simple, is we fuel small business growth. That's it. That's why every Swiftie wakes up every morning and comes to work. And if you don't believe in that, this is probably not the right place for you to work. And so you got to have that purpose, and people need to believe in that purpose and feel like it's something that, I want to do. And then once you have that, then you have your vision. Okay, so this is why I get up every morning, but where are we going? And that the vision is really the world will know us as the #1 small business solution provider. Right? And again, there's a bunch of other marketing words. You saw them on the thing, but that's it, right? So okay, that's the vision. This is why we get up every morning. This is the vision. That's a journey. You're on a journey from your purpose to your vision, and so during that journey, you need what we call a compass to guide you, because sometimes you can get off the path. And some companies call it values, whatever. We tend to call it living the exclamation. And the reason why the exclamation is so important, you see it all over. In fact, we're sitting in an office where there's exclamation points all over the place. And it really got back to the fact that when we brought 3 companies together, we had 3 different names. We had Swiftpage as a company name, we had Act as a company name, we had Sales Logics as a company name. And we were like, how do we bring these together? And we think, you know what? At the end of Act, there's an exclamation point. And we said, let's bring these together and let's replace every I in any of the words with an exclamation point. So Swiftpage has an exclamation point. Sales Logics had an exclamation point. Act had an exclamation. And so we said, okay, we want to live the exclamation. That's our values. That's our compass of what we do. So that's kind of the foundation that we did, and we took a lot of time to go around to every location. I personally went there. Our founder and chairman, Bob Ogden, went to, and we made sure everybody understood that, and everybody understood what that was about. And then we started naming ourselves. Okay, we're Swifties. Okay, well, what does a Swiftie mean? Well, if you're a Swiftie, you are fast-paced. Obviously, you got to be swift. You got to be innovative. You got to be fearless, and you got to want to be a winner. You got to have that, that insatiable appetite to win. And that's what a Swiftie is. And if we're all Swifties and we're all part of what we call Swiftpage Nation, right? Then we say, okay, as Swifties, Swiftpage Nation, we're one team on one journey to live the exclamation. And that's how we kind of did it. And that was we spent an enormous amount of time. Now, obviously, there's all kinds of when you're doing integration, there's all kinds of technical stuff. You have to have one financial system, right? You have to have one billing system, etc. So all that kind of stuff. But if you do, in my mind, if you do the culture first, if you really understand and everybody understands the purpose and buys in, and everybody understands where you're going and how you do it and what's the value base or what's the living the exclamation, it makes everybody part of one team, and they feel like they're really, really part of something. And that's how we did it.
When you're in the business-to-business world, obviously, and we see it time and time again, and I just actually put up a post on LinkedIn Pulse yesterday, or a blog post, and it's about how, to me anyways, the B2B vernacular is so wrong, that it's not business to business. I challenge people to say it's business to people, actually, or let's even take it a little bit deeper and say it's really human to human, because if you're that small business man or woman back there, you're working hard, you're trying to be fearless, but there's a lot of stuff out there that scares you, and you're looking for products and services and professional services providers that get you and understand what's going on. So my question to you is, you've done a really amazing job, the whole group here, with the Swiftie and the story around it. Has it always been that way with you, or you've been around long enough, like I have, coming up through the old ranks of business where it was just numbers, data, and people didn't matter that much, but they did matter to the bottom line. Where did you find your transformation into this understanding and appreciating this power of story, especially in a B2B world that's typically void of story?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we talked a little bit earlier about, I was with two really phenomenal companies, Kellogg's and Johnson & Johnson, and then, took what was really great about them and moved those forward. But there was also stuff that was not so great about them. And they had gotten so big that there was the people aspect of it was starting to go away. Right? You had so many people, and everybody was trying to do so many different things that it got so big that it actually get to a point where you would walk in every day and you'd be like, holy mackerel! We're all trying to better ourselves and not really worrying about the customers. So I think that, for me, the transformation came when I went from large companies to a smaller company. And I kind of did a step down, right? So, some people go, I'm going to go leave big companies and go to a startup or whatever. I kind of went from, $59 billion company to a $200 million company, and then to another $200 million company, and then to a $5 million company. And I'll tell you, it was a little scary at first. I was looking at the numbers on the sheet, and I was like, guys, we're missing some zeros on these, right? And they're like, no, that's how much money we got in the bank. I was like, oh dear God, what did I get myself into? But as I felt, you get to smaller, and you hear people always say, I want to go to a smaller company because I want to make a difference. And a lot of times people are just saying that, but it's really true, because when you get into a smaller company, and you saw as we walked around today, I kind of try and know everybody, we're very touchy-feely, we're all hugging each other and high-fiving each other, etc. And because the people do matter. And in my mind, when you get to a smaller company, that you can know everybody, and everybody can know you, and then everybody kind of knows exactly what it is that we're trying to do, I think that becomes powerful. And then because of that, when we're dealing with the solopreneur or the 10-person company or 20-person, we know exactly what they're going through, because we go through it as well. And so I think they understand that we can relate to them. And listen, Salesforce is a great company. They're fantastic, but they're really, really big. And I think if they're trying to sell to a small company, I'm not sure that they can relate to that.
But they do a wonderful job of serving the niches that they serve.
They're a great company, But when you're really focusing on the micro and small business, they need to know that you as a company know where they are, and we do, because we're in the same boat as they are.
You have an interesting insight into these companies because your customer service reps work with them every day, day in and day out. Can you share with us 2 or 3 things that you see are very common across the board that we're all sort of struggling with, but there's ways out? Maybe some things that we have some blinders on that you've seen through your different acquisitions and where you are today with ACT. What are the 3 things that we all do wrong?
Yes. Well, I don't know if you do it wrong, but I think that I'll say the 3 challenges, right? That every small business. Number 1 is time. We talked about this before. When you're a small business, the reason why you're small is because you're asking people to do multiple things, right? If you're a solopreneur, guess what you are? You're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the COO, you're the CMO, all wrapped up into one person. And you're trying to do certain things, and you don't have time to, let me install this software. Let me figure out, how to how to get all the information. Oh, let me figure out how to run reports, etc. So I think time is an extremely important thing that we have to make sure that as a small business, if we're providing tools, if we're providing services or whatever, how do we give back time? And I think that's the number one challenge that we have. I think the number two challenge that folks need to have is, as difficult as it is, you have to become intimate with your customers, and that's really, going back to number one. Where you don't have a whole lot of time, how do you really become intimate with your customers? How do you make that customer feel special? And in my past life, in coming through all these acquisitions or whatever, it's about what we call delighting the customer. And a lot of people think about it in different terms, and they say, oh, well, customer satisfaction. No, it's not about satisfaction, right? Because at any point in time, a customer was not going to be satisfied. You and I, we could have the best experience with, let's say a set of golf balls, right? But one time I have a bad experience with that, and I'm not satisfied at that time. But if I'm delighted with the company, with the experience that I've had in the past, I can overcome that one, not being satisfied. So, in the other way, I always do this is that when you fly like domestic airlines, you're just satisfied if you get up and you land right on time.
Yeah, exactly.
And then if you go to like somebody like a Singapore Air, and I don't know if you've ever flown that or not.
No, I haven't.
You come off of that flight and you're just like, well, that was a delightful experience. I want to get back on the plane. Type of thing. So that's the difference about that. So as a small business, that's the biggest challenge. Is okay. How can I? I'm trying to build my business. I'm trying to grow. But at the same time, is how do I delight those customers? And then the last challenge, I think, is don't try and get so many different tools to do it. Focus on what you need, right? And we all do that, right? I mean, even as consumers, we do that as well. People say, oh, I need this tool, I need this tool, and next thing you know, you have 6, 7, 8 tools, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to make them work together or whatever. Pick the 1, 2, or 3 that you really, really need. I would say that, and I'm a little bit biased because we're in the, CRM space, but really focus on a tool that's going to allow you to capture all the information in one place about your customers, and then start with that, and then add on to it from there. So I think those are 3 challenges, and we hear it all the time. One of the great experiences that I have, it's funny, we can go out and talk to our customer service reps out here, but I love to sit in and listen to some of the calls when the customers call in. And it's funny because our customer service guys say, you can't say anything, and I'm like, okay, I promise I won't. And they're like, no, really, you can't say anything, just listen. I was like, okay. And so, but I love to listen in on the calls. And inevitably, early on, what we were hearing, we get like 3 or 4 sentences into the call, and they would just like, oh, I don't have time for this. Could you just do this for me? And we're like, wow, there's something to that. And so that's how it really started changing the way we were looking at how we developed the product or the next generation of the product. Is like, wow, if we could have the software do more stuff for you as opposed to you having to do stuff to the software, that would change the game. And I don't know that we're 100% there yet, but I think that's kind of where we're driving.
Yeah, well, when you go back to your purpose, vision, and journey, you'll never be 100% there.
Correct.
You're going to just keep moving up the mountain and say, all right, we've hit a new peak.
Right.
Now what do we need to deliver? It just seems like, this is the way it typically works.
Yep.
Well, this is great. Well, when we come back from this break for our, again, wonderful sponsors, I'd like to get some final thoughts on where you see business going in general, and any advice that you have for us small businesses, solopreneurs out there that are trying to make it and getting over that time, crunch, delighting the consumers. And I wrote down here, toolopolis. That's what I find.
That's a great word.
That tool's cool. I think I want that. And then next thing I know, I go to my controller, and she goes, why are we paying $39.95 a month for this? And, I thought that was a cool tool when I was eating my Kellogg's cornflakes last Saturday, trying to figure out where my time was. Yeah, you're right. We don't need that. So we'll be right back after this message.
Great.
Did you know that on average, each of us sends around 10,000 emails each year? And what does each message include? Well, an email signature, right? Well, Angie's List realized the reach they had with their 270 employees and decided to use their email signatures to promote their flagship customer event called the Festival of Services. Angie's List dialed up Sigster to become mission control for its email signature campaign. In minutes, each employee had a Sigster-powered call to action in their email signature. In 6 months, the campaign had been viewed more than 2 million times, resulting in 4,500 visits to the registration portal, or 38% of all visits, which meant Sigster drove more engagement than any other tracked marketing activity. Now, if you want to ignite the most ubiquitous and overlooked promotional channel in your business from one simple platform, visit Sigster.com. That's SIGSTR.com. And see how they will help you message, measure, and manage your email signature marketing. Hey, if it's good enough for Angie, it's good enough for me. Your customers, employees, marketing campaigns, partners, and yes, your detractors, they're each telling a story right now about you. Where? On social media, in traditional print publications, in blog posts, on television, basically everywhere. And it's happening 24/7, in real time. Your mission? Track these stories and the sources that share them, smartly manage them, analyze them rapidly, and discern what you should do next, what you should do now. No wonder you're tired. Well, Signal Labs is a real-time, cross-media story tracking platform that makes your life easier. Their solution enables customers to quickly spot trends, see relevant stories unfold, and take action. So stay ahead of what the world thinks with Signal Labs. Learn more and sign up for a free demo at signallabs.com/story. Welcome back to Business of Story and my wonderful guest today, John Oechsle, CEO of Swiftpage, and their wonderful product, ACT. ACT Story, living the exclamation mark here as a Swiftie.
That's right.
I've got a lot of stories going on here. And thank you for making me an honorary Swiftie. I'm really jonesing now for the bright orange, caution orange jacket at some point. So you got to figure out how I can do that without actually being an employee.
Oh, I'm actually going to do one better for you.
Okay.
We talked about what is a Swiftie, fast-paced, innovative, fearless, and a winner. We actually implemented what we call the Fearless Challenge.
Yeah.
So, and I got up and we have these all Swiftie meetings every couple of months, and I said, you know what, guys, I want you to do something that just scares the hell out of you. And everybody's like, okay, John's lost it. What's going on? I said, no, really. I said, if you can find something, because being fearless doesn't mean that you're not afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. Fearless means that you've conquered a fear.
Courage.
Yeah, exactly.
Face of like, oh my God.
And so, it's funny because, Swifties will, and I said, listen, don't tell me, I'm afraid of tuna fish and I ate a tuna fish sandwich. That's not too fearless. But tell me that you can't get up in front of 300 people and give a presentation and then do it. Mm-hmm. Tell me that you're scared to death of heights and then jump out of an airplane. Do that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, so you starting this business, starting this podcast or whatever, that's pretty fearless. I'll give you, and if they do that, we give them what's called the Fearless Fleece. Uh-huh. It's an orange fleece. Good. It says Swiftpage on it. On the back says Fearless. So I'll give you one of those Fearless fleeces.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Tell us about a time in your life when you had to take on something and your courage had to come up. I mean, this fearlessness obviously came from a moment. Yeah. Can you share a moment with us where you were like, oh my God, what am I going to do or how am I going to take
Yeah, absolutely. And this was probably back in 2012. I had just taken over as CEO, and we talked about, we had this opportunity to acquire these two companies. But let's talk about how we got that opportunity. So we were, chugging along at $5 million in revenue, and a lot of our revenue was coming from the fact that we had embedded our technology into the ACT product line already, mm-hmm. And we were getting a lot of, revenue coming from that. And Sage owned those two products, and all of a sudden one day they were having their quarterly call because they're a publicly traded company, and they announced on that they're going to focus their business down a little bit, and they're going to divest 7 companies, and they named them. And 2 of the companies that they named were ACT and Sales Logics, and it was like, oh my God, that's about 60% of my revenue. Yeah. I just heard that these things are going to get divested. We don't know who's going to buy them, etc. Now, interestingly enough, our founder, Bob Ogden, was over in the UK, and he was actually at the Sage office over in Newcastle when this happened. And he called me, and it was 2:30 in the morning in Denver time, and I'm sitting there in my underwear listening to this quarterly call.
And if a call comes in at 2:30 in the morning, it's typically my son's in trouble with the police somewhere, or they're selling our company.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
okay, gotcha.
And he said, "John, did you just hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sitting here in my underwear listening to this call." And he goes, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Bob, you march right back in there and you tell them that we're going to buy those two companies." And he goes, "Well, how are we going to do that?" I said, "I have no clue. First of all, it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm in my underwear. But tomorrow morning we will figure this out. Just tell them we will buy this thing." So he hangs up and I hang up, and he goes in and tells them that. And so long story short, now all of a sudden we were like, holy crap, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, everybody was like, oh, it'll never happen. And now all of a sudden you're like, well, no, I'm going to make it happen now, right? And so we made it happen. And then I can remember the day that this thing closed, Bob and I were in this office where we're sitting.
Seriously, right
in
here.
This office,
Yeah.
and we were on a conference call. And we had, lawyers galore, because it was a very complicated acquisition, because it was a three-way acquisition, etc. And so, we're listening to this, and they were like, it's almost like a mission control launch thing. They were like, hey, so-and-so, are you good? Good to go, okay, money's transferred, wires transferred, blah, blah, blah. And they go, okay, guys, well, Bob and John, congratulations, you've got these two businesses. And then if you've ever been on a conference call when people leave, you hear that boop, 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 boop.
Yeah.
Well, we heard like 500 boop, 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 boops, right? We're like, boop, 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 boop. And then Bob and I are looking at each other, and we're like, dear God in heaven, what did we just do, right? And it was scary, right? Because you're like, oh my God, we now have these three companies. And we walked out of this office, and everybody was looking at us like, okay, guys, now what do we do? So anyway, that was, we got the orange fleece for that.
That's awesome. Any final words for the small business owner out there, and how you guys are there to be of service to them?
Yeah, I think, and kind of relating to this story, right? We've been talking a lot about this, and I really think that business, as we continue to evolve, we have to be really, really careful that business just doesn't become so automated that we lose that touch.
And you're working in the automation business, so that's interesting.
Yeah, and you don't, and people will want to say, oh, I want to do no touch business, no touch sales, or whatever. We just have to be careful, because people like to interact with people. People like to hear stories, and so I would say, I'd caution the small businesses is that yes, we all have to automate, we all have to be efficient or whatever, but don't lose that touch. And then the other thing that I would say is, keep it simple. That's why I love stories, right? Stories keep things simple, because okay, we can all get really technical and talk about all kinds of stuff, but if you can tell a really crisp, clear story, I believe that your customers will really, really appreciate that, and they'll stay with you.
I think really, really great advice, and that idea about touching, about being there with folks. Since I've started the podcast, this whole tribe of business storytellers have come out of the woodwork, and they didn't know me. I knew some of them because I followed them around, and I get pinged every day now from them, an email, and the next thing I know, hey, do you have time to Skype? So they're around the world, but you see them face to face on your computer, and they are all longing for this. Let's continue to build a tribe, but let's connect. And are you going to be at this conference? I want to meet you here. And that has really been underscored to me in just the last month or so, because it's absolutely snowballed since we started this in July. And I think that rings true to exactly what you're saying, that we get behind our computers. We want to keep it simple. We automate everything into toolopolis, as we talked about. So many tools that we get insulated from the world. And my line of work is we're trying to break down those walls and bring story to B2B in particular, professional services firms. So it's interesting on one hand that you have this technology that does automate, simplify, and keeps me from the world. but we can't forget the water cooler. We have to be there in front of, and with some of our folks too. I said, when's the last time you went over and saw Jane the client? Oh yeah, we've been emailing back and forth, and I sent her the call report. And I go, I know, but when was the last time you went and saw her, or had lunch with her, or took her and had drinks, or just chat? And I don't know if you see this too. The millennial world or whatever, the younger workers are so used to texting and being online that I find I have to push them out of the office and say, no, go sit with them and have some fun.
Correct. And people want to feel like they're part of something, which is why we created Swiftpage Nation.
Yeah.
Not just the employees, which are the Swifties, but all of our partners and our customers, right? They're not just buying software. They're now part of Swiftpage Nation, and they feel like they're part of something.
Part of the family.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. You've made me feel like a part of the family out here today, taking time out of an extraordinarily busy schedule. And thank you again for being a part of our Business of Story family. It's wonderful to have you and act as a sponsor in the program.
Well, thank you for having me. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks. And thank you all for listening to this edition of Business of Story. If you like what you hear, of course, go to iTunes, give us your rating. Share some thoughts on there. Share it with your world. If there are some folks that you would like for us to talk to, or categories, areas that you would like for us to cover, please let me know. Go to businessofstory.com. You can find all of my contact information there. And of course, while you're there, you can find lots of tools to download to help you craft and tell compelling business stories that actually connect you with the world and help grow your professional services firm further, faster. So thank you for listening, and until next time, I'm Park Howell with Business of Story.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business of Story. Don't forget there are terrific free storytelling resources for you at thebusinessofstory.com, where you'll also find the complete show archive. The Business of Story is sponsored by Oracle Marketing Cloud, Park & Co., Sixter, Signal Labs, and ACT, and is produced by Convince and Convert Media. Find more great shows like The Business of Story at marketingpodcasts.com, the first search engine for marketing podcasts. Podcast imaging by AudioBag.com.